Talk to me about the declining rates for marriage, because this is a trend that's been going on for a while. I think we've got whatever it is, 38% of Gen Z saying that they're not having sex. We've got sex recession and all the rest of it. But I do get the sense that more worrying than that is like casual sex coming and going, unless it, I don't know, precedes more meaningful relationships happening. I don't know what the sort of heritage is there. But the marriage thing, I think, seems to be a little bit more concerning. So have you had a look at this? Have you thought about what's going on here, modern marriage trends?
Can I just repeat the take of a different Modern Wisdom guest, which is Lyman Stone, because I interviewed him the other day, and he had a view on this, which I found so interesting and actually really pull together a lot of the things I've been confused about when looking at marriage rates and fertility and all this stuff that I'm writing about. He doesn't think that actually, he basically thinks the only thing that is wrong with fertility rates in the West is, I mean, he's looking at America, but this applies to Britain as well, is people getting married late. He thinks that's the only problem, because actually once people are married, they tend to have kids. It's almost like you get married and you're like, well, what else are we going to do, right? He says that actually the number of people who are married and are deliberately not having children, like the dinks, they're quite culturally prominent, but they're actually rare. There aren't very many people who do that. Most people get married, and if they can, they will have some children, right? But when people are getting married into, I think the average age of first marriage now is over 30, definitely. And the average age of marriage in general is quite old, because people who get married multiple times account for a disproportionate number of marriages, so they drag it up. But during the baby boom, the average age of first marriage was so young. It was like 22 or something, really young. And even in the 80s, I got married when I was 25, which is basically a child bride in my peer group. In the 80s, that was average, right? So people are basically just skipping the whole of their 20s during which they could have been having children, because they're not actually coupling up until later, or they're not coupling up at all. So Lyman's take, and I think it's actually a really interesting one, people often say it's just to do with housing. It's just because housing is expensive, or it's just to do with the availability of contraception, or it's just to do with feminism telling women that they're girl bosses and they don't need to have kids, whatever. He says, no, it's actually just a coordination problem. It's actually just that people are not getting married sufficiently early so that they then have their whole of their reproductive lives ahead of them and can have, 2.5 kids. But that is linked to the other stuff, in the sense that he thinks, and I think this is really persuasive, that the reason people aren't getting married younger is because men in their 20s are not able to, for various reasons, signal their suitability as husbands in a way they used to. Because what women are looking for when they're looking for a husband is someone who they know is going to be reliable during moments of difficulty when they have children. Because when you're pregnant and when you're nursing and you've got young children, you simultaneously need more resources and also have less ability to get those resources for yourself. So you're in a real pickle. And the person or people who can provide that for you, you need them, you need someone. And the obvious person is the father of your children. And that's what monogamous marriage is, basically, legally obliging men to step up during those moments. And so women are looking for a man who will do that, and who is capable of providing those resources in that difficult moment. And they look for signals in men that they're up to that, and wealth is one of them. But there are other ways of showing it as well, like going to an elite university, that's pretty good. Or running your own business, or military service. That's an interesting example.
Down to about 3%, I think, compared with 50% in the 1940s. Yeah.
That I asked Lyman this, and he was like, yeah, he thought it was true. Is it possible that part of the reason there was a post-war baby boom, particularly in America, is because so many men had military service and had this opportunity to demonstrate their suitability as fathers and husbands?
See how reliable I am. I just went to war. I can raise your child.
Exactly. Yeah. It is harder now for young men to do that costly signal and to say, like it's harder to buy property, depending on where you are, but it is generally harder to buy property when you're younger. The nature of everyone going to university actually is kind of, well, not everyone, but when lots of people go to university, it actually devalues the signal. And it also basically extends your adolescence in that you can't start your business, buy your property, do whatever until you've graduated. And this just like pushes further and further into your 20s. Yeah, military service, as you say, much less common. Basically, the ways that men could demonstrate that they are up to being fathers and husbands have become scarcer. And it's no good if you start like, if you gain those costly signals in your 50s, right? Because at that point, like you're outside of the reproductive window. It has to be really in your 20s or maybe in your early 30s. And that is exactly, I think, what we are missing right now. And maybe that's the key thing. Maybe that's why like birth rates are falling off a cliff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but certainly comparatively, if you were to roll in whatever Malcolm Collins's or a Stephen J. Shaw's idea around this, that as females who seem to be much better at all types of education, socioeconomic success in the modern world is pretty much laid at their feet until they pay the motherhood tax in their 30s or whatever. Yeah. They are more conscientious on average. They're better at handing in homework. I saw Alex Datesike post something this morning about how they can do better sort of long-term planning about when they need to revise for tests and stuff. Like every different part of education, when the breaks get taken off for women, for girls, it seems to be they're pretty good at it, and they're flourishing. And then I think if you have that, which sets, well, look, this is how much I can look after me. If you, at the very least, can't look after me as well as I can look after me, how much faith can I have in you being able to step up? The bare minimum should be that you can do what I can do, and it seems like you maybe can't. And then on top of that, I think the exposure that we have to life expectations of other people online, getting to see the best of everyone's life while we get to see the worst of our own, creates this lifestyle inflation expectation, intergenerational competition theory. Look at where my parents were when they were my age, and they had this house, and they had this thing, and they had this, that. I'm never going to be able to get this. Despite when economists do every different type of analysis that you fucking can, adjusted for inflation, Gen Z are better off than every other generation that came before them, economically. They feel like they're not. And the way that you feel is reality when it comes to this, because you're not looking at, you're not doing an economist, you don't have a spreadsheet to work out what's actually going on. What you're doing is saying, well, how do I feel about this? You go, I feel poor and unprepared and like the world is about to burn because it's filled with carbon. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah. And also for all of these reasons you described about women being great highlighter girls, basically, women earn more than men do in their 20s. And that's a catastrophe, actually. That's actually a catastrophe because it's precisely what women do not want in a partner, someone who earns less than them. So unless those women are then coupling with significantly older men, which most people don't actually do. I mean, I think that the average age gap between couples is only like 2 years. It's not that big. A lot of women are just going to be like, why would I saddle myself to some guy who I don't think can actually be relied upon? I'm just not going to do that. And the overwhelmingly most common reason that women give when asked, why don't you have children, is not because I'm a girl boss or because I don't own my house or whatever. It's actually, I can't find the right man.
Just haven't found the right partner. Yeah, that was the GSS survey. Just haven't found the right partner. Every time that I'm around, my favorite place to do evolutionary psychology mating research is the Soho House pool here in Austin. So it's like just replete with university educated, 60 to 100 grand earning attractive girls. And, there's all of these cabanas around the outside of this pool, and the music's at a level where everybody can hear, and no one's really got much going on. It's kind of a bit boring, but it's sort of interesting to talk. And I just sit and go, so girl, like, who's single? And talk to me, like, what is it that you're finding about the girls that you date? And invariably, they're not mature. They don't have their life together. And I'm like, okay, so what do you mean when you say that? Like, talk to me about what you mean. And sometimes they can come up with, that emotionally they can't really get on the same level as me. They don't seem to be prepared to commit. Like the classic kind of Lothario guys, especially if you're going a little bit more quote unquote high value. But a lot of the time it's a bit more amorphous than that. It's kind of blobby. And I think to myself, I reckon you out-earn most of the guys that you're trying to date. So, okay, so who is it that you're dating at the moment? You're 26, Lydia. Who is it that you're dating at the moment? Oh, well, my last boyfriend was 35, and the guy that I'm seeing at the moment's 38. I'm like, these are big age gaps. And that was really surprising to me.
It's one of the reasons why. Do you remember Princeton Mom?
No.
This is this woman who wrote. This was quite a few years ago now. Who wrote in the Princeton student magazine or the alumni magazine, maybe, advice to women at Princeton, which is, you will never be around so many eligible men ever in the rest of your life. The most important thing you can do at Princeton is find a husband, not get your degree. And this used to be like the old phrase that women used to use or everyone used to use as women would go to university to get their MRS, right? And actually, it's quite a lot to be said for it. If you do go to university, one of the advantages of just marrying your university boyfriend, which is what I did, is that neither of you have had any career success yet, right? Like, you've been selected for your suitability for that institution, but you can't do this like fine-grained stressing about who earns more, whatever, because no one earns anything.
Oh,
And so,
I see. You're just picking someone at the start of the race as opposed to the end of it.
yeah, and obviously you want to be making a pretty good bet, but I can see how you could get into a real problem if you're one of these Soho House girls, women, sorry, I should say, who, has quite a lot of career success, absolutely does not want to date down. And you also get to that point where you're like, I've waited this long, I've got to find the perfect person.
Well, look at how much effort I've put into myself. Look at how much sweat and blood and tears I've crafted. And, I think one of the things that might help this at least a little bit in terms of reducing the need for hypergamy, because it does seem like high-performing women desire more hypergamous mates than non-high-performing women. So this is, as women earn and educate themselves more effectively further up the socioeconomic ladder, they don't reduce down their desire for a partner who's better than them. Proportionally, they want even more, even as they are in absolute terms more effective. So you go, oh my God, like, as you are a rarefied, if you stand atop your own dominance hierarchy, you're looking above and across one to like who is it that's left? It's like, again, it's LeBron James. You know what I mean? It's like all roads lead back to LeBron James. But
the comparison that I've heard as well, which I like, is with buying a lamp for your house. So if you have just bought a house and there's nothing in it and you need to buy a bunch of stuff, you need to buy a lamp, you can be like, oh yeah, cool, I'll just get whatever lamp looks sort of nice. If, however, you have perfectly designed your house, like it is every element of it has been really carefully thought through in terms of decor, and then you need to find a lamp that just like perfectly fits that house, it's going to be much harder to find a lamp because you're going to have much more picky criteria.
But you also can't build the house around the lamp.
Indeed, right. That is kind of what it's like when you're looking for a spouse later in life. You've already kind of set up your life. You know where you're living, you know what your career is, you have really strong preferences. You've probably kind of structured your daily schedule around exactly what you like and whatever. Like, all of your life is designed around you. And then you have to find someone who fits into that. Whereas if you get married young, you kind of just develop it together and you end up, your lives as a joint thing are formed around each other. And obviously that does sometimes go wrong, but I think that is part of the reason why there's this age. Basically, if you get married somewhere in the medium kind of age range between like 20 and 35, maybe something like that, like not too young, not too old, you're less likely to get divorced. And I think it probably has something to do with that. It's that sweet spot in terms of you're not so young that you make really stupid decisions, but also you form your life around your partner, not the other way around.